This is Block 10, the 1960s, Part 6, Changing Roles for Women with the section Roe v. Wade. No discussion of the modern American political reality or the American feminist movement or women's movement would be complete without a discussion of the Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade. It is by far the most controversial Supreme Court decision of the post-war era. It was decided in 1973 under Warren Burger's court, and it overturned 50 states, all 50 states' laws on abortion, and replaced them with a constitutional right to have an abortion in the first trimester of pregnancy. The legal reasoning that the justices used was the same right to privacy that was used in the Griswold case. That, you know, if a woman had a right to privacy concerning contraception, then a woman also had a right to privacy choosing when she could terminate a pregnancy. In effect, you know, the first trimester rule could never apply because there's no reason legally to say that, you know, Tuesday you can have an abortion because it's the first trimester, but Wednesday you can't have an abortion because it's magically the second trimester. So what in effect has been created was a constitutional protection for the right to have an abortion at all times during a pregnancy, right up to the point at which the baby is ready to be born. The decision of Roe v. Wade launched a culture war of such intense power that it had not that the culture wars had not been seen on this level since the arguments over slavery in the 1850s. And I really believe that it is such a powerful issue because each side calls into its defense one of the most important strands in who we are as Americans. Pro-choice advocates, women who support the right for a person to have an abortion, argue that a woman is an individual with unique and total control over her body and over her own decisions. And thus, a decision of whether to abort a fetus or not can only be hers and hers alone. And the reason that's such a powerful argument is because as Americans we value our individualism. That the individualism is the most important thing in the world, that you yourself are not a means to an end. You yourself are your own living, breathing creature before God, if you will, and the rights of the individual must always be respected, even if they are unpopular. So, you know, the pro-choice argument goes to an argument towards the primacy of the individual. Very powerful strand in American history and culture. Pro-life advocates, those who reject a woman's right to have an abortion, argue that all of the semantics and all of the arguments aside hide the fact, a very simple fact, and that very simple fact is that you are killing a baby, and no other rights can interfere with an individual's right to life. This argument goes to the very powerful strand of Christianity at the heart of the American experience. That, you know, it was Christianity that, you know, that battled slavery and won. It was Christianity that created all of those reform movements. That, you know, the spirit of Christianity is an incredibly powerful spirit in American culture and history. And people in the pro-life camp see themselves very explicitly as the same people who fought against the moral evil of slavery. And as much as the abolitionists were mocked in their day and they were considered extremists, you know, 150 years later we look at the abolitionists and say, how come everybody wasn't one? That it makes no sense to defend slavery or even to kind of let slavery just exist and not worry about it. That pro-life advocates say that the moral evil of murdering unborn children is worse, they argue, than the moral evil of slavery, and they are convinced that history will vindicate them. They're both great arguments, and the fact that they are both great arguments, and the fact that they both go to fundamentally who we are, but in opposite directions, makes abortion, you know, it was and remains at the heart of the division between Americans of both beliefs. Liberals and progressives tend to be pro-choice, conservatives tend to be pro-life, and you know, it's one of those things that there's very little. If you believe that abortion is murder, there's very little middle ground there. It's like, is there a middle ground on slavery? You know, a person is either a slave or he's not a slave. You can either murder a baby or you can't murder a baby. And on the other side, the advocates of choice, they argue that it's not a baby yet, and you're trying to impose your religious views on me. Who the heck do you think you are for the imposition of your religious views? You know, that every individual has a right to their own conscience and to their own actions. So it's an incredibly divisive thing because there's so little middle ground in between the two sides. And abortion helped launch, the so-called culture wars, which are going to help the conservative resurgence that we're going to see in Block 11.